All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome. I'm Dolly McCarthy. Welcome to the first City Council Candidates Forum, sponsored by the Rotary Club of Naperville. This is our second evening. First night went really well, and we expect this one to be just the same. This is the first time the Rotary Club has sponsored the Candidates Forum, and before we get into the program tonight, I want to introduce the Rotary Club of Naperville's president, John Gallagher, who will tell us why the Rotary Club decided to sponsor this event. John.
Thank you, Dolly, and thank you, everyone, for being here today. The Rotary Club has been in Naperville since 1941. This year, we will be celebrating our 75th year commitment to community service in Naperville. Our focus has always been on how to benefit our community, whether it's through giving out over $200,000 in scholarships to college-bound students, or, as in the last 7 years, generating over $700,000 for important community assets as Loaves and Fishes, Hesed House, and DuPage Pads. In addition, you'll find Rotarians from our club in Nigeria, Kenya, India, Honduras, and Haiti, improving water, sanitation, and education at all levels, and eradicating polio in our world. You may know that we are down to 2 countries with active polio, and we are this close to eradicating polio from the ends of the earth. While Rotary is a non-political and non-religious service organization, we are open to all who wish to serve the community and the world. Our local theme, as you'll see here, is leadership development through community service. It's with that in mind that we felt compelled to bring you these candidate forums. We recognize the significant investment every candidate is making in our community, and we felt that you needed a vehicle to hear them. These are unusual times for our council and mayoral races. With the last election, the people of Naperville rejected the alderman format for city council and returned to a council at large. With that change, unprecedentedly, 8 council positions will stand for election. 19 candidates are vying for those positions in this coming election, April 7th. Because so many people are running, and because this is an important election for Naperville, our town, the Rotary Club of Naperville will be sponsoring 3 forums over these 3 days, this being our second of 3. And by doing this, we will be able to provide an opportunity for the candidates to communicate their positions in a meaningful way. We want to thank you again for joining us in this timed, honored American tradition, and hope that you find this evening valuable as you, the electorate, decide the future of our city. Before we begin, VFW has a cash bar downstairs. You are not allowed to leave here and go get anything. But after the meeting, we'd encourage you to go down there, and hopefully the candidates will go down there with you, and you'll be able to have some time with them. So with that, and we can support our vets. So with that, Dolly, let's begin.
Thanks, John. All right, here are the rules for tonight's forum. The Rotary Club has generated about 7 questions for the candidates touching on various aspects of governing in Naperville. In addition, we have asked a few personal questions. Every question was shared with the candidates a week ago, and depending upon the question, they will have between 1 minute to 2 minutes, or 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes to answer the question. Our timekeeper will be Rachel Osira. Is she here? No, it's me. It's you, Catherine. All right, Catherine will have a series of cards that will let the candidates know how much time they have. If they run over their time, she will ring a bell, and she won't stop ringing that bell until you stop talking. All right, now I'd like to introduce the candidates for tonight's forum. On the far end, in alphabetical order, is Becky Anderson. Next to her, Kevin Gallagher, John Crumman, Joe McElroy, Thomas O'Hale, Steve Peterson, and David Wentz. All right, I want to thank you all for participating in the forum. The way we will do this is as follows. I will ask the question, and we will first start with Becky Anderson and go through the line up in alphabetical order. For the second question, I will go to Kevin to start, and then for the third to John, and so on. And we'll have 2 microphones for the candidates to share, and they'll sit at the table and pass the microphone down the line. And as I said earlier, Catherine will ring the bell. She's our little timekeeper. The yellow goes up first, and then they'll have like 10 seconds. Is that right? Finish up? Okay. And then the red, stop. Okay. Let's see. Make sure I get all the rules out. And then we'll ring the bell to get you to stop talking, but we really didn't have. All right, let's begin with the first question. We'll start with Becky Anderson. Great. And this one you have 2 minutes to answer. And the first question is, why are you running for office in Naperville?
Well, I think the biggest reason, and this is kind of a joke, my husband said, would you just shut up and do something about it? So, but I think the larger reason is I come from a family, 6 generations we've been in Naperville. And being a part of a 6th-generation family business and being ingrained in this community and seeing it change over all those years, 140 years now, you just sense this place is at home. This is home, and this is where your heart is. And having a business here, but also living here, you put all you have in it. You volunteer, you do everything, what you can do to make it a better place. You know, raising your children here makes you want it to be a better place. And I hope that there will be further generations in my family that will find Naperville to be their home. You know, as a business owner, my grandmother always said, support your local merchants. Support local. And that was long before the big corporations and the chains moved to Naperville. So meaning support your local merchant was support your friends, all your friends who own businesses, but also volunteer, get involved. And that's what has been the mantra for our family. I come from a long line of Rotarians, and also too a long line of people who've run for office, not necessarily successfully all the time, but my grandfather was a city commissioner before we had the city council. But being the president of the American Booksellers Association, this is the national trade association for my business, I saw so much going around this country and other countries around the world and noticing what small business, what independent businesses do for communities. And they build a more sustainable, more thrivable, more lasting community because everyone is putting their money where their hearts are. And so getting involved is, to me, just a natural step after doing all those things, because what I learned in that kind of governance was for who, at what benefit, at what cost.
Kevin Gallagher.
Thank you. My name's Kevin Gallagher, and I'm running for city council because I think that the city is a crossroads. I served on the city council from 1995 to 2002, and I've lived in Naperville for almost 26 years now. Back when I served the first time, Naperville was going through a tremendous growth spurt, and everything that the city did was really geared toward managing growth, managing development. It's time to turn the page on that, and so there's really 3 things that I think are key to moving the city forward. First of all, I think we need to revamp our zoning ordinance and our zoning process here in the city of Naperville. The zoning ordinance is 35 years old, and it was really geared for a community that was growing and not one that's matured. We have vacant commercial properties all over the city, and given what's happening internationally with the internet, we need new processes to be able to redevelop these properties to meet the needs of the people that own the properties, that use the properties, and the community. The second thing I think we need to do is develop new resources of revenue for the city. Much of the budget in the city depends on having revenues from development. Those funds are gone. They're not coming back. And we need to develop those new resources. And the third thing that's personal to me, I would like to see the city become a leader in employing individuals with developmental disabilities and disabled war veterans. There are jobs in the city that these individuals can perform. They will perform at a high level, and they will be very productive. And I think it's important that the city of Naperville take a leadership position on that. Office Max and Walgreens in our town have already done that, and we need to match.
John Crumman.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the VFW and the Rotary Club for putting this on. My name is John Crumman. Hopefully you've seen a few of my signs. They're the ones with the big red K on them. A little bit about me. I'm a professor of economics, accounting, and finance at Benedictine University in Lisle and Concordia University in River Forest. I'm also an engineer. That's my day job. I'm an engineering executive for a company up in Warrenville. I've worked with multiple Fortune 500 companies. I have an automotive patent. I've published multiple technical papers on the international level. Why am I running? 14 years ago, my wife passed away from cancer, and my two boys were 8 and 6. And we moved to Naperville 3 years later, and we were broken. We were broken, and this community fixed us. And there's a debt there that I owe to Naperville I can never repay. My oldest boy is at Iowa State. He's now studying psychology. And my younger boy is at Indiana, go Hoosiers, and he's studying economics and computer science. They would not be the men they are becoming if we didn't live in Naperville. So now I have the ability to give back. I have skills. Again, I'm a professor of economics, accounting, and finance. I'm also an engineer with some pretty good technical chops. And I think that's what the city needs. The two biggest issues for me for the city, one is the debt, $7 million last year, $12 million this year, $12 million next year. That's something I think I can be a team member and help fix. The other is bringing innovation-based companies to Naperville up on Deal Road. Being an engineer, I speak their language.
Joe McElroy.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks a lot to the VFW, and thank you to Rotary for doing this. It's always nice to be at the VFW, although I do miss not having the fish here, so I'll be back on Friday, and for those dollar drafts as well. I ran for the City Council because I'd served on the Planning Commission for several years and wanted to have more say in the final decision-making process. I'm a city planner by training. Before we moved to Naperville 27 years ago, I was a deputy planning director in Aurora, so my background is examining cities and trying to figure out what's going right and what could be done better. And so that's what I find myself doing wherever we go. When we go on vacation, I take like the world's most boring slides, because it'll be slides of, street signs and things like that. Anything where you can help make a city better. It's the way my mind works. And as Kevin mentioned, this city is going through a dramatic transformation from a ultra-high growth mode to a redevelopment phase. And it's going to take a completely different way of governing the city. In a way, it's more complicated. When you do a development on the edge of town that the farmer wants to sell and the builder wants to build, there's not too much controversy. But if you want to redevelop an acre and a half inside of town, you can start to have a lot of problems. So that's one of my real strengths, being able to deal with that. Also, I think it's important to start dealing with our neighborhoods, which we have not paid much attention to over the years, and that and the vacant commercial spaces that were mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Thomas O'Hale.
I think that I should be elected to office because I have both a message and a mission. Now, recently at the last budget workshop, the city manager stated that we're all built out and you're not going to see much growth from this point on. He stated we must focus on maintenance. Now, it's, even though he said this and everybody heard it, it's my recollection that when we left that meeting, that we had $16.5 million slated to spend if all the things that were presented before the city council were funded. So my question is everyone hearing the message? It's clear. We must listen to it. Now, in regards to my mission, it's clear also. First, I stand for a balanced budget. Mark me when I say that. A balanced budget. Second, I stand for freeze on property taxes, no more. And third, I expect that we will always have the services, superior services. Scott Walker has proven that there's not a connection between high taxes and services. If he can do it in Wisconsin, we can do it here.
Steve Peterson?
Thank you. Hello, I'm Steve Peterson. I would like to thank the Rotary and VFW as well. Before I get started, I'd like to point out and thank my parents who are in attendance tonight supporting me. My dad, a proud member of the VFW, so thanks for coming out. That plays into why I'm doing this. So the reason I'm running is really family. Naperville is where I grew up. I went to Beebe, I went to Jefferson, I graduated from North in 1990. I then went to college and came back to raise my family here. I went to Miami University where I got a BA and an MA. I got a master's in business communication. I came back and taught at North Central College for a while, and then started my family here. And about 5 years ago, about five years and 4 months ago, not that I have this date stuck in my head, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I look back at it as actually like a blessing. Like it's probably one of the most profound and good things that happened to me in a really bizarre way. Because it reset my course on a lot of things that I'd been doing and had been focused on. I'm a business guy. I had been starting businesses. I'd been involved in a handful of startups, which are local and have created jobs here in Naperville. But I was really focused on that. And going through the process of my cancer treatments, I realized I needed to get more involved with my family, with my community, and I made a decision during that period that I would do that. And so when this opportunity came up, and I saw that the positions, we had 8 positions open, and I mean, this is great, the Rotary, because this is a way for me to get my voice out, because a lot of folks don't know me. I went to my kids and I said, look, I really want to do this. And they said, Dad, you can do it under one condition. Your slogan and the first law you pass has to be dessert first. And I looked at my 8-year-old girls and I said, I think that's pretty cool. So we're going to do that. So you'll see on my signs and cards, dessert first. And that's so my reminder is I'm here for my kids so that they'll go through same schools as me, Beebe, Jefferson, and North, and then hopefully my grandkids will as well. So thank you.
David Wentz.
Again, I'd like to thank both the VFW and the Rotary Club for putting this on. This is a great opportunity for all of us to speak, and I do want to thank you for giving us this opportunity. I'm running for re-election because I love public service. I consider myself a good listener and a quick learner. Naperville is a great place to raise a family. I'm a third-generation DuPage County resident. When I was growing up in Glen Ellen, my grandparents lived in Naperville. I saw a lot of growth go through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and realized that, as Mr. Krieger had said recently, yes, we are just about built out. However, we are looking at ways of developing further means of furthering our greatness in Naperville. It takes a wealth of experience and passion to run for city council. I've been an attorney for 25 years and decided a couple years ago, after running for 4 years as a township trustee, that it was time to take a step into running for city council. The last 2 years have been a very interesting opportunity. I thank many of the councilmen who've worked with me. This was a great opportunity. But I think that we're looking at a new opportunity to manage our growth, but also work with our residents to consider what our options are for future build-out. I think that a couple things that I'd like to focus on this time around is working better with our senior community, also working better on commercial development, and seeing that we can bring in some high-tech, high-growth areas along the north side and south side. I think that we're looking at an opportunity there to perhaps reduplicate what was being done in Chicago as far as 1871. I think we can do the same thing here in Naperville.
All right. Moving on to the second question, we're going to begin with Kevin Gallagher. You'll have 1.5 minutes to answer this one. And the question is, since renewable energy and recycling have been a major effort over the past 20 years in Naperville, what are your thoughts about renewable energy and its role in the future of Naperville?
Well, I think renewable energy is absolutely here to stay, and we are at the tip of the iceberg. I think that the city has been very progressive throughout the years in pushing renewable energy, recycling, and all of that type of thing. The city's been very active over the last several years in preparing the city for electric automobiles. And having said that, I think that it's important that we realize that the initiative isn't just at the local level, but it's also at the national level as well. And I think that we need to stay attuned to the ongoing regulations that are coming forth from Washington. One of the things that we need to do because of government mandates is to recertify our stormwater management systems. That requires some expense. And I think to the extent that the city can stay ahead of the curve and be forward thinking, we'll be able to better fund some of these projects. We're moving away from a carbon-based economy. The city derives much of its revenues from taxes on gasoline and on electricity, and those are funds that I think are going to be shrinking in the years to come. And we need to be understanding how we're going to replace those revenues. At a minimum, fuel efficiency on automobiles is going to double in the next 10, 15 years, and that's going to result in lower fuel taxes. We need to be prepared to deal with that.
John Crumman.
When I first saw this question, I couldn't believe it was on there. This is something I am greatly passionate about. Just going to read off a few things here, if you allow me. I'm chairman of the Public Utility Advisory Board and was a major player in smart grid. I'm also was chairman of the Chamber of Commerce Sustainability Forum, where we would put on forums about sustainable energy. My last assignment, professional assignment, was a global program manager where we took a Freightliner engine and was converting it from diesel to natural gas. My job out of Lombard was to coordinate engineers in Europe, India, manufacturing center in North Carolina, and a customer in Portland, Oregon. And we were converting the big Freightliner trucks, the ones that go from here to California, again, from diesel to natural gas. This is something I am very, very passionate about. Also, I would say that this is something that Naperville is really could take great advantage of. I've been speaking for the last 4 years about bringing high-tech companies to Naperville. The hardest thing we had wasn't about taxes, it was about finding qualified people. Naperville has qualified lawyers, engineers, accountants. There's a human resource treasure chest here that any company would be greatly happy to take full advantage of. My last comment, and I'm running out of time, is green energy for green energy's sake, or advanced or alternative energy isn't just a good idea. It has to have a positive return on investment. And if it doesn't have a positive return on investment, tax dollars are too valuable to just for a good idea.
Joe McElroy.
Thank you. I live in fear of that bell, by the way. So I'll be brief. In addition to some of the initiatives that Kevin mentioned, we are working on LED lights, which save a lot of money and energy, and we have been a leader in recycling. I think it's important to look on sustainability as an economic development strategy. If it's handled properly, it can be a real boom. There seems to be, on sustainability and all that around the environment, sort of a false dichotomy. Some people are just pro-business and they're going to say, I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt business, and some people are just pro-green, so whatever it's going to take. As is often the case for me, I find myself torn because I think that things have to make economic sense. I noticed that some cities are banning plastic bags. Evanston's done that. So today I was talking to one of our grocery store owners about that, and it turns out that while it's a good idea, there are two sides to it. What do you do with perishables, things like that? And so that's a good example of how you have to weigh the pros and cons and do cost-benefit analysis of any environmental initiative. Thank you.
Thomas O'Hale?
Well, in listening to candidates as we go through this process, you know, I agree with everyone. We should separate our garbage. We should use solar panels. We should ride our bikes more often. Electric cars, of course, is something we want to have. And then, of course, natural gas in cars and buses. And, you know, it seems that we are kind of on the cutting edge of doing all these things. One thing I think we could do that is a little bit out of the ordinary, and that's plant more trees in Naperville. Every now and then, if you put on a educational program, they say, well, you know, 1/8 of the great rainforest in Brazil is now gone. And then in India and other countries, Sumatra, once again, large sections are gone. Well, I'll tell you what, I think it's time that we take a look at this, maybe become transcendentalists, live like Thoreau, small houses, and go forward with no plastic cups. This is the key, I think. The oceans are awash in plastic. If there's anything that we can do to not add to this, let's do it.
Steve Peterson?
Thank you. So I got to say, I love to plant the trees. So I can't steal it because I didn't write it down, but so I won't. That's a fantastic idea. So where I'm at on the green initiatives is I think it's great that we're engaged, involved, having the conversation, but it is a balance, right? Most of the new cutting-edge technologies for these green initiatives are very expensive. And it's our tax dollars we're spending. So we have to strike that balance and make sure that everybody's on board with the changes we're making. And back to the plastic bags and the plastic cups and everything else. I mean, that move years ago was because we weren't as good at recycling paper and we wanted to save the trees, right? And so we moved to plastic bags. The unintended consequences are the oceans are awash with plastic. And so now we should plant trees. And I did have that one written down. You can look. Okay. So,
that's a deal.
All right, perfect. So at any rate, so for me, it's, you know, we look at the cars and the electric stations downtown Naperville. Our tax dollars, you know, paid for those, and they're expensive, and it's cool that we have them. However, I wrestle with the fact that we get our power from a coal-fired power plant, so all we've really done is moved from, you know, having carbon gas here in Naperville to somebody else, and I don't think that's exactly what we're looking to do either. So there's always an unintended consequence, and it's expensive. We just got to think through it. But I'm fully supportive of things that make sense to the community and that we can afford to do.
David Wentz?
Thank you. I agree also that we do need to strike a balance, but investing in renewable energy resources and recycling, they're vital to our future in Naperville, but also our region. Naperville is seen as an established leader in the renewable energy field that we need to keep leading that way. We do own our own utility company. However, we're too dependent now on some IMEA other policies, and that relies primarily on coal production. One of the things I think we need to encourage in this balance is providing more incentives for local businesses and residents to invest in solar and wind power as alternative means. We also need to look at renewable energy because it's important for long-term sustainability and reducing our carbon footprint. You've been seeing a lot and hearing a lot about electrical charged vehicles. We have several charging stations we funded in downtown Naperville, and I think that's only going to continue growing. Another area that you can see more development of is the compressed natural gas. We recently converted over and approved a waste hauling contract with Waste Management on primarily on the basis that they will have less of environmental impact because a lot of their fleet are being turned over to CNG. We've asked our Public Works Department to also consider turning over and converting trucks to CNG for that same reason. So I think it's a good thing that we're moving in the right direction.
Becky Anderson?
Well, I think renewable energy is the future, and I think we're so short-term thinking sometimes that we don't think about future generations. But what bothers me is our rates for our utilities have gone up 6% and could go up another 7%. And when you think about what Prairie State Coal, you know, where we're getting some of our energy from, coal is the thing of the past. We have to move beyond coal. And I think when we're talking about the municipal electric agency, you know, we were supposed to have gotten low costs for our energy, and that didn't happen. Actually, our costs are going up. So I think it might be time to limit our participation and think of other ways to do this. And also, there are other suburbs that are also trying to get away from that municipal energy agency. Also, too, I think talking about wind and solar, those types of things create jobs. It also makes investment. When you think of the Pioneer Trail Wind Farm, where we are getting some of that, you can buy in for as little as $5 a month to buy some of that renewable energy. Naperville is one of the top cities in the country of our size that people participate in buying some of that renewable energy. We need to get more and more of our citizens buying into that. We already have certain companies doing that already. As for our recycling in this town, we have a great program for prescription jugs, all sorts of different ways to recycle hazardous materials. I would like to see us getting a lot of food waste from restaurants and home usage into composting piles and get it out of our landfills. It's creating a lot of atmospheric problems in landfills.
All right, our third question on the minds of many Napervillians. You'll have a minute and a half to answer this one. What are your thoughts about the SECA program and your suggestions on how the program should be changed or how the money should be distributed? We'll begin with John Crumman.
And of course, we get this question with Becky sitting just to my right. I usually go to 3 or 4 symphonies a year. I go to the opera. I go to Broadway shows. I support the arts. The arts elevate us. And so we should have a very strong art program for the city funds, whether that's the municipal band, whether that's Shakespeare in the Park. I'm also on the Exchange Club. I know SECA helps out with Ribs Fest. All that being said, I support the arts. But there seems to be some political misunderstandings about what SECA is and what SECA is not. And so I would look at the council and say, look at your policies, look at your procedures, and look at your protocols. Obviously, they're too loose, and they're opening up too much debate. What is SECA really? Let's have leadership. Let's set policy so that the confusion is minimized.
Joe McElroy.
Thank you. SECA stands for Special Events and Cultural Amenities. Part of the reason that there's so much angst around this is that there is a great volunteer spirit in this city, which is wonderful, but that means there's lots of demand on this money. And let's remember that where the funding comes from. This comes from many people who come from out of town. So I actually think that SECA is a good program. I think that the City Council's done a good job of trying to do the best that we can with the situation, given how many people we have who want the money. I think going into the future, I like the idea of trying to come up with some certain things that are always going to be at least not funded on a total basis, but in terms of maintenance, like what's going to happen with the Public Arts Project. I think the idea of going to a situation where you know you've got things locked in is good, and I think in general it's important to put an emphasis on preserving and enhancing what we already have, and sometimes we have to resist the temptation to start and fund new initiatives.
Thomas O'Hale.
Well, you know, I would say new initiatives are good, and I'm not trying to argue with anybody regarding this, but I think that with SECA, some groups have relied upon this money year after year after year. And, you know, somebody else should be given a chance. This is money that is startup money. that others can possibly use to bring their culture or their ideas of culture here. In fact, I'm going to talk to Becky about having a Poe Fest in October in Naperville. I think that would be a great idea with literature. The other thing is it's got to be focused. It's got to be focused on the business. For example, if the village says, here's money, and it's a tax from basically on the people in business, then has it benefited business and higher profits? Because if it benefits business and higher profits, then there's higher tax receipts. If there's higher tax receipts, then money returns to Naperville. It's a full cycle. That's the key. I think culture, yes, but remember, this money is set aside also to really rejuvenate and keep our businesses on a profitable basis. Steve
Peterson.
So I agree with what most folks have said here, for sure. The SECA is, for me, I think it's really, really cool. I think it sets Naperville apart in so many ways. It's money that's a small tax to pay on your dinner bill or your bar bill. A lot of out-of-town dollars pouring in to do it, and it supports things that no other way. I don't know if Ron Keller's here, but I've bumped into him to a handful of these things. My band instructor in junior high, running a municipal band. Right? I mean, how many towns have a municipal band that I can now take my kids to a band shell? We can hang out and watch the guy who taught me how to play the drums, still continue on with this tradition. I can go to the parade. It just goes on and on and on. And whether it's the Century Walk or it's the River Walk or it's all the things this funds, I think it's amazing, right? So I want to start with one of the things I say on my cards is the brand, Naperville the brand, right? And I feel like sometimes we get caught up in these issues and kind of focus on the negativity of them or get in kind of what I call small ball. And SECA is so much good that let's focus on the good and let's figure out how to maximize the good. Now, are there places where we can tighten it up? And would I like to see people not use it year after year after year for the same things? Of course, right? I mean, it should be kind of a help somebody get something started and then make it a profitable function and then move on. But overall, I think SECA is amazing, and I think it's something that Naperville really should treasure.
David Wentz.
Thank you. Well, I think SECA in general is very well run. I think the committee does a great job, Becky. And the rules, though, have been in place for a number of years, but I think that some of them need to be enforced better. On Saturday morning, I sat through the hearing and saw a number of groups come forward with special events where it was clear they were using this as almost their sole means of support. I used to sit on the allocations committee for the Exchange Club, and one of the rules that we had in place was this was not your sole means of support. We don't want you to be surviving on this, but we want to be able to look at this as a possibility to have requirement that they actively seek corporate funding and corporate sponsorship as another component. I think those applicants that understood this subtlety did much better. I also don't like how the city of Naperville has been using SECA grants as a way of setting aside money for capital projects, things like the Children's Museum and the Carillon maintenance. I think recently with the with the Children's Museum being closed, there may be an influx and emergency need for that. I don't like to see the rating of the SECA funds for that purpose, but I do want to say that the fund itself is working. We do have a lot of permanent artwork out, and I think that it's a direct benefactor from that purpose. So it's working.
All right, Becky Anderson.
Well, I have to say the process of SECA being the chairman and being on the commission for 6 years now, it has totally changed. And as for speaking to applicants, we totally stress, we review every applicant extremely thoroughly. People who are applying for certain things, they are not going to be awarded. We will not use this as a sustaining fund for organizations. So that is not what happens with SECA. As for existing agreements with maintenance and everything, what we're talking about is the Carillon. That's what keeps the maintenance. The Riverwalk, the maintenance for the Riverwalk comes out of SECA. These are cultural amenities that make our city so much richer. Moving Century Walk and the maintenance to that makes total sense. That's what I suggested, moving it to an existing agreement. So, but there are some questions that need to be answered. But those types of things that people come to Naperville, those are totally, to me, need to be in SECA. So many organizations do not depend on this. We make sure that this is not a sustaining fund. We ask them many questions. Also, we do allow for new initiatives, and so some of those were funded this year. We were not allowed to because we are capped at $2 million. This year was just $2,040,000. The rest of the funds are been used for pension and for other purposes. But the thing is, we are capped at $2 million. It was extremely hard this year to award all the money. But what this fund does, it really makes a lot of wonderful events happen. And over 50% of the people who dine and buy food or beverage in this town come from outside of Naperville. So that 1% that is collected are for people who are coming to Naperville, all of the reasons that this fund is for. So it circulates around.
Kevin Gallagher.
Certainly Naperville has tremendous public services, public programs, and beautiful Riverwalk and things like that. My concern with the SECA fund is that it's so far removed from what it was originally intended to be. When they started talking about SECA, and we started these discussions 20 years ago when I was on the council, it was intended to reimburse entities that used significant amounts of city services, whether it be Rib Fest, the Last Fling, the downtown summer sale, the St. Patrick's Day Parade, Century Walk, Riverwalk. And it's expanded so far beyond that that I don't think that it's anything more in a lot of instances than a slush fund that people look at as a way to go and try to get some money to help their project. There are long-term programs that have been going on in this community for years and years and years that provide tremendous work and finances to the city. And those ought to be funded. But I think we've gotten so far away from that that we shouldn't say, okay, we have to spend $2 million, we have that amount to spend. The question ought to be, it costs X number of dollars to fund these specific events, and that's all that we're going to spend. If there's extra money, refund it back to the people that collect it or find another use for it.
Okay, our next question. You'll have a minute and a half to answer this one. Naperville has a serious problem with traffic. No surprise there, especially moving north and south in almost every area of the community. What are your thoughts and plans to address this issue?
In a minute
and we'll
and a
begin
half.
with Joe McElroy.
Thank you very much. First of all, the good news is that we are installing in the next year what I guess you could call a smart traffic system that will deal with traffic on Washington. The way these things work now is they're programmed to guess what times of day and week the traffic is going to be the heaviest, and so the lights change based on that. This will be more of a smart system that can actually sense what's happening with that traffic pattern on that day and that hour and adjust the lights accordingly. So that should help with Washington, one of the north-south things. At one of our earlier sessions, one of my colleagues, Steve, pointed out that he lives in Saybrook but cannot really ride his bicycle to the aforementioned concerts in Central Park. He could, but that would be perhaps taking his life with his hands trying to get across Ogden. That's a problem, and one thing that we could do is we need to work a lot harder on having a coherent, real bicycle system that actually can be used to get people from place to place. Finally, regarding traffic, we need to look at our zoning ordinances, which was mentioned earlier. There's remember the old corner grocery store? Well, most of those are non-conforming uses under present zoning, so I think that we should be encouraging those types of local mom and pops because that helps cut down on traffic.
Thomas O'Hale.
You know, our city manager said, well, Naperville is all built out. And I'd like to say, personally, I think it's overbuilt. When you take 10 pounds of population and put it in a 5-pound bag of geometric or geography, it just is a lot of people, and that's the problem. There's too many people, and then the streets are not wide enough. Now, timing of lights makes a great deal of sense. I think restrictive parking on Washington Street during rush hour makes a great deal of sense. The proposed computerized central traffic system, I don't think makes a lot of sense. And I kind of disagree with Joe because, you know, if the computer tells you, well, there's a lot of cars out there, what is it going to do? You know, put the cars over on the side street? Tell everybody to go into the parking lots now and come out of the parking lots when we say it's okay? You know, it doesn't make any sense. And, you know, I think, and believe me, this is a big budget item. You talk about balancing the budget. If I was on the board, I would not go anywhere near that unless I had another city that I could see that used it and it worked.
Steve Peterson.
All right, Joe. Thanks for the reference, at least. Stole my thunder, but I guess I get a minute and a half. I can riff. So, no, I look at this issue, and we did have a discussion about this earlier at an event. And look, there's no appetite for more roads. Route 59 shows that. There's plenty of cars. Population's not changing. Road rage is a huge part of it. So unless we're going to put everybody into some kind of you know, head review, I look at bikes. I mean, it really is for me. When my kids were younger, I could put them in the little trailer. You've probably seen me driving down or riding down there because I had a bunch of flags in the back so I wouldn't get run over. And I would take my kids downtown that way. And then my kids got to where they could ride themselves on the little bikes, which is where they're at now, twin 8-year-olds. And it's no way I can do it. I mean, literally, there is no way I'm putting my kids on the bikes and riding from literally a mile and a half from my house to downtown Naperville. So what do? I pack them up into my wife's giant Toyota SUV, and we pile downtown Naperville and do like the rest of you and hunt for parking and sit on Washington, all of that. So I would much prefer to ride a bike. I think there's massive opportunities for us to make our biking lanes and facilities much better, and that's something that's really important to me.
David Wentz.
Thank you. A couple years ago, we took a citizen survey, and traffic management going north-south was one of the top issues, was actually probably the top issue, the biggest concern. We took that as a request and initiative that we need to apply funds to that. I do agree that with Joe that this centralized traffic management system will be a good thing. It will sense who is there at what time, will actually regulate traffic much more effectively. We're also looking into getting a widening of the North Aurora Road underpass. We're getting much needed funds for that. That is also long overdue. But when I became a councilman, one of the things I looked at was how can we also improve north-south on Washington Street. And I led an initiative to eliminate 2 parking spots right at Washington by the post office, and have seen firsthand how that area does run a lot smoother, in part because there's a right turn lane there, and access to get traffic off of main drags through right turn lanes is a much needed remedy. You're going to see that on 75th Street. I think there's a lot of areas, Book Road and 95th is one that I think we need to make better use of right turn lanes. But you also need to look at perhaps using our Naper Notify system to alert people of high congested traffic instances when there's an accident, when there's a backup, much like what we have for flooded streets and snow removal. I think that's another area that we could develop that into, but it's all about communication.
Becky Anderson.
Well, I'm going to do a little flip on this, but in some ways, having all this traffic is a good thing. That means people want to be here. People want to live here. They want to visit here. They want to come and do business here. They want to eat here. They want to be entertained here. So that is one good thing. The thing is about Naperville, we were a farm town, so the streets weren't designed for all this, so we have to deal with it. You know, we're not one of the bedroom communities of Chicago that have the larger avenues, the larger sidewalks, the whole thing. Sometimes, yeah, it can be 35 minutes from north to south in this town. And what I see what's happening on Washington Street. You know, removing the parking at 4 o'clock on is great, but if you remove the parking on Washington Street, downtown Naperville, it will become a highway and really split our downtown in half. The parking really needs to remain during the day on Washington Street downtown. But what we do need are more fixed bus routes so people can take mass transportation. That is really what we need. The PACE routes we have are just not adequate for what we really need. I would love to see more mass transit because in most cities that have congestion, that is one of the biggest solutions. But also the North Aurora underpass, that will help, and also the new timing on all the lighting systems, that will help for sure. I just think we have what we have. The improvements on Route 59 will help a lot. But having that public transportation, that would be a sweet dream.
Kevin Gallagher.
Before I was on the city council 20 years ago, I served on the Transportation Advisory Board, and the #1 issue that everybody in this community said needed to be solved was traffic. We're sitting here 20 years later, and everybody says the #1 issue that needs to be solved is traffic. Well, in the last 20 years, we've blown out intersections with 7-lane cross sections. We've redesigned the I-88 interchange. We've redeveloped Route 59. What we never did, and what Fred Rank, who was the traffic engineer 20 years ago, said needed to be done, was work with the other governments that control our roads and get them on the same page as us. We have an issue with DuPage County because they time their lights differently than the city of Naperville does. We have an issue with Will County because they time their lights differently than the city of Naperville does. We have an issue with the state of Illinois because they time the traffic lights different than the city of Naperville does. So when you get to an intersection like Raymond, North Aurora, Ogden Avenue, where you have 3 different jurisdictions all coming together, and you have an underpass at Ogden Avenue for the railroad track that's not properly designed for today's traffic, you've got a mess, and it is a mess there. But until we get better government coordination with the other people that control our roads, there's not much that we can do. And if I'm lucky enough or unfortunate enough to be sitting here 20 years from now, I'm sure we'll still be talking about traffic.
John Crumman.
Best for last, maybe. My job and my teaching takes me all over the city, into the city, up to Schaumburg, down to the south side of Chicago. And the hardest part of any of those commutes, bar none, is getting out of Naperville. I add an extra half hour no matter where I'm going. And when people say, oh, Chicago traffic must be horrible, I go, well, try living in Naperville. For me, it's the intersections. I think the roads are fine. At least when I try, I'm at 87th and Modaf, and I try to get up to I-88. Napier Boulevard, Ogden, they all seem to be fine. It's when you come to an intersection that is the problem. I look at what happened, or what we did down at 75th and Washington, and put in some turn lanes, get us through the intersections, and as soon as you're through the intersection, you can bring the street back down to less narrow. So for me, as I look at the fluid dynamics, and that's really what's going on here, as an engineer, it's all about getting through the restrictions, and the restrictions are the intersections, and so let's open them up, put some right turn lanes in, and get people through them.
Okay. Now we'd like to know a little bit more about you. You'll have 2 minutes to answer this question. Please give us an example of a mistake that you've made and what you did as a result of it, and perhaps how you corrected it. Let's start with Thomas O'Hale.
I probably have made every mistake a man can make, at least 2 or 3 times. But you know, my chess partner recently, when I was talking about this, said, Tom, the biggest mistake you've made is running for the city council. And he said, you know, you haven't lived here long enough. But, you know, I'm so sure you're not going to get elected. He said this, that if you're elected, I'm going to demand a recount if you don't. So, but, you know, probably the biggest mistake I've made is just not listening to people enough. I've heard this many, many times, and finally, I'd like to say I'm moving in the right direction, that I am listening to people with various opinions and weighing carefully what they're saying to me and looking how it helps them and in the same process helps me.
Steve Peterson?
You done?
One thing I got to say, just real quick.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
One way of also stopping this congestion is to not allow developers to go vertical.
Steve Peterson?
All right, so if you guys haven't figured this out about me yet, I'm kind of an optimist, right? So as far as the whole mistake thing goes, I don't spend a ton of time looking back, dwelling on things that didn't go my way or have any regrets. In fact, I agonized on this question for a long time, which is probably more negativity I've had in a while, trying to figure out what it would be. If I'm pushed to say, what's my biggest mistake? And at the same time, my dad and I were actually talking about this, not part of this question, not too long ago, is also my biggest asset. And that is that I trust people. And in my businesses I've started, it has been the #1 reason why I've been successful. I've started businesses, they've grown, I've sold them, it's been a great experience, and it's because I put my hands and my trust into other people that I believed in would deliver. At the same time, and if you want to hear the painful side of this, I'll tell you some time over a beer, but those same people I trusted, at times, they betrayed that trust, and it hurts, and it was not good. But I look back at that, and I say, I won't change that. That's not anything, because the benefits of trusting people and believing in people so outweigh the negativity from when you get a betrayal. I will continue to trust people. I'll continue to believe in people, and that's the optimistic, positive, passionate view that I'll bring to Naperville and the council.
David Wentz?
Well, let me first say that none of us are perfect. As an attorney, oftentimes we have that tendency to react and push that button or send a message back we probably shouldn't have. About a year ago, I was involved in a situation where I was raising funds for my daughter's school, actually for her soccer team, and got involved with a little bit too much passion for this cause. And it was something I felt horrible about. I think that the comments I made, I disrespected someone, and I said I was really sorry for him. But I made a public apology and a private apology. Again, I think that we all learn from these circumstances. I think we all learn how to treat people with respect, and I think it's something that we all go through. So I think it was something I deeply regret, but I did take account for it and owned up to it. Thank you.
Becky Anderson?
The mistake I kind of thought of it turned out being a good thing after all, but it has to do with my business. And a few years ago, we brought in a controversial author, and I won't name who it was, but this author was going to appear at Naperville North High School too. And we started getting many calls threatening my employees, threatening to bomb our store. These calls were coming in constantly about this author. You know, our belief as a bookseller, we stand for the First Amendment, we stand for freedom of speech. We represent voices from all spectrums, from all beliefs, from all backgrounds. My employees were scared to death. Absolutely just scared to death. There were threats. I had threats, voicemail messages, everything. They were coming in so many different ways. Naperville North canceled the event. We canceled our event. And then the calls amazingly stopped. It made us realize that a vocal minority were making these threats. The thing is, what it did to me is that these calls came in. I lost some faith in my community. These calls were so vicious. And all we're doing is trying to represent voices and all people from all walks of life. It just made me so sad. And what I did, I contacted the American Booksellers Foundation for Free Expression, and our director, who I'd been on that board, he suggested I have a town hall. And so we called a town hall. We had over 250 people come and stand up for us, but stand up for freedom of speech. It was so refreshing. It renewed my faith in this community. And but what it did, it made me realize that there were only 2 people from the other side, though all the rest were in favor of what we had done, and said, bring the guy back, bring him back to the schools. So it was one of those things where I made a mistake, We kind of decided, but then it kind of ended up being not a mistake, because what it did, it just made me believe that people will stand up for what they believe, and that's the First Amendment.
Kevin Gallagher.
My grandmother passed away 4 years ago, 6 weeks after her 100th birthday. And she was lucid and vibrant until the end. And at her 100th birthday party, after she finished dancing, she got up and said, the secret to life is to remember that if you're not making mistakes, you're not living. So I've made more mistakes than I even care to remember. I couldn't even begin to tell you what my biggest mistake was, because they're numerous. But there's different kinds of mistakes. There's mistakes where you intentionally do something wrong, and I think you need to apologize for those. Probably the thing that I've tried to keep in mind is that the prescription for disaster is to try to please all of the people all of the time. And somebody told me that before I got elected, and I don't think I always adhered to that very well. But I grew up with 5 boys, and sports was a huge part of our growth and our development and whatnot. And my father's advice to us was, if you strike out, forget about it. If you're playing goalie and you let a goal in, forget about it. And so I think for those mistakes that you do make, you need to forget about them. Take the lesson, learn from it, but forget about it. You can't change it. Life moves only in one direction. And so hopefully, as you go on and you get older, you gain a little bit of wisdom, gain a little bit of knowledge, and you're able to put some of those mistakes behind you. I've got 6-year-old twins, and I've got a 24-year-old, and I can tell you that the mistakes I make with my 6-year-olds are a lot different than the ones I make with my oldest. And they're the beneficiaries of a lot of that wisdom of parenting that I've received.
John Crumman.
Agreed. My boys aren't here, are they? They would go on and on. It's a safe mistake, I guess. As a young engineer, I got my master's in engineering, and I went to work for General Motors, and boy, was I going to set the world on fire. And within about 3 or 4 months, I had come up with a design that was going to save General Motors about $4 million a year. And boy, was I happy. And boy, I was going to do it. And about 3 weeks later, my chief engineer calls me into his office, and I'm thinking, wow, he's going to, reward me. And he goes, "Kid, what are you doing?" I'm like, and I showed him all the technical stuff, and he said, "That's fine, that's great, but you got to work with people." I was all caught up in the idea, in the technology, and I forgot about people. And I took that and I learned from it. And I'd like to, hopefully, this is the latest appraisal I got. My supervisor said this about me. I have a leadership style that synthesizes the problem, gathers stakeholder analysis, formulates a plan, and focuses a team effort to manage a resolution. I've come a long way in 30 years.
Joe McElroy.
Thank you. Have you ever seen a coffee mug with the expression on it, "Be reasonable, do it my way"? I mention that because there's a lot of that in me. And yeah, of course, I've made lots of mistakes, but I want to address this in terms of being on the city council, which was how I originally looked at the question. And I was trying to think about particular votes or things I had said that turned out to be dumb, and I realized that because of the long-term nature of the work that we do, it's really too soon to tell. 2 of the more controversial things that we've worked on are Water Street and the Science Center. Now, on the Water Street development, I was greatly concerned and remain concerned about the prospect of the buildings part of the time blocking the Riverwalk when we have a sunny day in the winter. But I decided that the long-term benefits of the development were not worth kiboshing over that, so I voted for it. More recently, there was a question about putting a new science center in the middle of the historic district on the North Central campus. One person voted against that. That was me. I realized then that maybe I was wrong on that. I knew it before I made the vote, but I felt that in the long run, I thought it was too much density, too much intensity for that neighborhood. Now, perhaps in the long run, I'll find out that it was a better thing for the city. But the point is, lots of the decisions we make at the time and for a long time afterwards, it's too soon to know what's right and what's wrong. And that's why it's important to take a long-term view on things.
Okay. Our next question, you'll have a minute and a half to answer. What community service projects have you spearheaded, and why did you lead those events? And we'll begin with Steve Peterson.
Okay, sounds good. So mine isn't so much a community service project as a group of folks that I've put together in order to raise money for the Wounded Warriors Foundation. So my buddy who's a veteran in the Navy came to me and said we need to find a way to raise some money, and so we formed a group called, started as The Zoo, which later became Live, Love, Laugh Zoo, which is a group of people who put on full-body animal spandex, which is a pretty good look, I promise you. I happen to be a blue cheetah. And we go out and we run in races. And we do 10 and 12-mile adventure races. We started off with 5 guys. We traveled to Ohio for our first race and raised money. And we've got a Facebook page and kind of a following. We've now grown to 24 men and women. All of the women are pink tigers, and the guys are various different animals and cheetahs and whatnot. So, at any rate, we've raised a ton of money for Wounded Warriors. Another thing that's close to my heart, of course, is cancer foundations. So I've raised money for Live Strong, for Relay for Life, locally with DuPage Pads, with Adopt. So a lot of different things that I'm doing to raise money for both national and local charity.
David Wentz.
Thank you. Back in about 2007, 2008, after being involved with Exchange Club for a number of years, I brought an idea to the forefront of Naperville, but it was something that realized that it was something bigger than our cause, bigger than our club. I think it was something that needed to be involving the entire community. So we collaborated. We collaborated with the Park District, the city, I believe all 4 Rotary clubs at the time, the Exchange Club, Lions clubs, and a bunch of others. It's called the Healing Field of Honor. I can say with all due respect, this is an opportunity that all of us have had a way of honoring veterans, working together, and saying what can we do to show our respect back to them. We brought in an organization called Operation Support Our Troops America that helped us with matching grants, and I'm proud to say that we're going to be doing it again this next fall. But it's something that was certainly a wonderful opportunity for all of us. We've raised over $150,000, but I think it's something that the reason why was to honor veterans in our community and also throughout all of our lives. But it touched everyone here, and I think those who were involved really appreciated it as well.
Becky Anderson.
I'm going to say that about IndieBound. I founded IndieBound, which is a local independent business alliance here in Naperville. Right now we have over 160 members. This is an easy group to join. If you're an independent local business, it costs you all of $30 to join. And you get a red sign to put in the window of your business. Basically, it's an education organization where we educate consumers the importance of independent, locally owned businesses. That's on the economy. We provide 4 times as many jobs as the large corporate and big chain stores. The amount of money that is recirculated in our community is almost 4 times as much. And then all of the money, the time that we donate, volunteering and all the items and that we donate to different organizations in town so outweighs our corporate competition. And it's also a consumer education thing. We educate consumers, but we educate each other. So every month we have best practices. It's just a great, simple way for business to get together and share their concerns and their hopes and what they're doing in their businesses. And we end up doing a lot of really cool things with each other to cross-promote and do business with one another. The other thing that I'm very proud about, I founded a group called Andrea's Angels. A number of years ago, it was named after Andrea Rocca-Pazinski. She was a senior at Naperville Central High School. She was murdered her freshman year in college. She was going to be a teacher, and she volunteered in the West Aurora schools to help kids. And we named it after her, and we collect new and used books, and we are closing in on 1 million books that we have collected in all those years. We distribute them to schools. Many books have gone to Africa. That is the language, English is the language of education there. But we have distributed so many books, but it's been a really cool cause.
Kevin Gallagher.
One of the great things about Naperville is there's so many opportunities for people to contribute. Most recently, I've been working trying to develop employment programs for individuals with developmental disabilities, autism, and disabled war veterans. But I think the one initiative that I'm most proud of was the Naperville response after 2005 Hurricane Katrina. A group of people in the town were very, very emotionally touched by what happened to the people in Mississippi and New Orleans after the hurricane. And we adopted the town of Pass Christian, Mississippi. And we agreed to build 20 homes for uninsured, indigent people whose homes were obliterated by the hurricane. I had the opportunity to travel down there shortly after the hurricane and was stunned by the devastation. We upheld our end of the bargain. A side note, it was a great teaching moment because I told my son, who was 15 at the time, that we were going away for spring break, and he said, "Awesome." And he said, "Where are we going?" I said, "We're going to Gulf Coast." And he said, "Awesome." And he finally figured out and said, "Wait a minute, we're going to that town that got destroyed by the hurricane, aren't we?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, are you at least going to let me drive on my driver's permit?" And I did. The best part was when we came back, he said, "Dad, I just want to tell you, I was so mad at you when you told me that's what we were going to do, but it's the best thing that could have happened to me." And he went back the next 2 years on church groups to continue the process.
John Crumman.
This is a difficult question for me to answer because I'm not sure I actually spearheaded anything as much as I have worked in a team atmosphere with a lot of great people. As a single father, I didn't get a whole lot of opportunity to be coach. It just wasn't happening. I had to do laundry and all the other things. So when an opportunity came up to be a religious education teacher to my boys, it was on Sunday night. I said, "Sunday night? I can do Sunday night." So I did it for 2 years for my oldest and 2 years for my second. I had a dozen 13-year-olds in my basement on Sunday night talking about religion. And I learned then that you just need to be quiet, and they will tell you everything you need to know. And they want to tell you what their thoughts are. And all of the other, religious education teachers are saying, "How do you get them to come to class? And how do you?" And my kids were wanting to come. And I think it was not anything I did, but be quiet, let them speak, and you'd be amazed at the faith that our young people have.
Joe McElroy.
Thank you. We've heard a lot of high visibility things, and certainly being on city council is high visibility. Something that I'm going to talk about is something that I worked on for several years that was just the opposite. There used to be a reading for the blind facility in Naperville near what's now Butera, and so every week for a few hours I would go there and do the work that needs to be done for this organization. And I liked it because it was, there was no politics. You weren't trying to impress anybody. It was just you in a room with a microphone reading this stuff and doing some real grunt work that needed to be done to help people who needed a break. So that's something that I think is really important, probably because I do so much of this high visibility stuff. It's a room full of 100 people staring at me right now. So it was really refreshing to do something that low-keyed.
Thomas O'Hale.
One of the spearheads is my courage in running in this race and having my voice be heard. Even though my chess partner thought this was ridiculous, that I should do this, I still think some people are going to vote for me. And I think I have some very good ideas, and a new face and a new voice might be good for the council. One other thing I did spearhead, it was, there's 2 ponds on West Street and a little clump of trees around it. I heard that it was rezoned from single-family homes to a bunch of townhouses. And I gathered together, or people gathered around me, but we had a group and we fought for 4 years to keep that from being developed. I mean, really. We talk with the mayor, we talk with the council, we talk with the just everybody. And finally, the Park District purchased the land, and today, when you go down that road, you can see 2 beautiful ponds, a wonderful clump of trees, and you might feel good about it.
All right, well, it's been a really good evening. A lot of good ideas, answers, some insights. We have one final question, though, and you'll have 2 minutes to answer this one. Very simply, why should we vote for you? So we'll begin with David Wentz.
Well, first off, again, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This is a great opportunity for all of us to hear firsthand everyone's positions on the issues. When I first became a councilman, someone said to me, do 2 things: be prepared and be able to defend your position. Those types of opportunities don't come often. I think it's something where over the last 2 years we've been prepared. I've been looking at our budget. Been looking at ways we can continue to collaborate as a council. And I do think that this is a great opportunity for a chance to become reelected. But partly because we have to listen to you. You are the voters. You are the ones that vote us in. We also want to be able to say that without you, we can't do this. So I think that's one of the essential things I've learned. With respect to our agendas going forward, I think that we do have to look at ways of working with getting better feedback from both our youth and our seniors. One of the initiatives that I've started with some other councilmen is a senior task force. We had meetings earlier today to discuss how we're going to go ahead and work through that. But I think that realistically, this council is going to have needs for experience. It can need opportunity for leadership and people who are willing to stand up for what they believe. And I believe I've been able to demonstrate that as a councilman for the last 2 years. And thank you again for your support.
Becky Anderson.
I would too like to thank the Rotary Club of Naperville and also the VFW. I have a little paperweight that I got for speaking at our Rotary Club once, and it has the 4-way test, and it's that. And that I look at all the time. If you keep that at your front of mind, that will educate so many of your decisions. And I think the mission of Rotary can be the mission for all of us. So those things I keep all the time in the front of my mind. The things I think for Naperville and where I think I can fit in to this is I've been a business person for a long time, and the way I look at business, you look at a P&L, you look at your finances, you look at your overhead, all those different things. Also, being involved in businesses in 4 different suburbs, I bring the perspective of 4 different other suburbs into what we do here in Naperville. But it's also the way that I, through my business and this community, I've connected through what I do to so many different organizations, not-for-profits, other businesses, partnering, figuring out how we can do something really cool together. And that's what I think is something that I can bring to the council. What I hope we can do in the city, and I hear this so many times from retirees, but also younger couples, how they can't afford to live here anymore. What can we do about this to make this a more affordable city for those who are retired and now find property taxes too high, or those young millennials who cannot afford a home, and they still say that buying that first home is that first way to build your wealth. It is still one of those things. We have to make the city affordable for all, because we don't want this to become an age ghetto, where we find that in other cities and other places. We need the diversity in the city, of all kinds of diversity. So I think it's that spirit and those kinds of things that I hope for this city. Also hoping that we don't have to get into more debt, that we don't have to dig more deeply and go into bonds and doing other things that make the city and the budget more difficult, because if we do end up on another hard time, economic hard time, we could be in even bigger trouble.
Kevin Gallagher.
Again, I just want to thank everybody in the Rotary and the VFW. I'm running for city council because I've been on both sides of the dais up there. I've represented many, many clients in front of the city council, and I've dealt with the staff many, many times behind the scenes, and our system's not working the way it should. Our zoning ordinance is not in a position to address the needs that we have for the 21st century. We need to redo that, and I know how to do that. I'm very, very concerned about the state of the city's finances. The depletion of the reserves is something that many of the councilmen that I serve with, and you know who they are, would be spitting nails over. We're at a critical point because we're transitioning from the growth economy to a more mature economy, and I don't know that the city has looked down the road to say, what have we been relying on in the past that's not going to be available to us, and what are the opportunities in the future? Life is changing not day to day anymore, it's changing minute by minute. There's some kid in college out there right now who's working on some idea that 5 years from now we're all going to be talking about. The city has not created the kind of an environment where those people will want to come and do business here. They won't want to come here and set up their office or whatever else they might have because our processes and our ordinance are not where they need to be. I think we need to completely revamp the zoning ordinance and our process to make them both more business friendly and, more importantly, more resident friendly. I know how to do that. I've seen what other communities are doing, and I want to implement the best practices from those communities.
John Crumman.
You make a great straight man. I agree. The debt is an issue. Bringing new businesses is an issue. If you like SKF coming and setting up a center of excellence on the north side up near Deal, that's what I do. I know SKF like the back of my hand. I understand them. I can speak their language. So that's the technical and the business aspect. But more than that, I think it's leadership and relationships. My leadership style I've described over the last couple hours here. And then my relationships. I have walked every neighborhood from 111th all the way up to I-88. Took me 4 years, but I've knocked on your door and asked for your vote. If you weren't there, I left the flyer in your door. I built relationships with residents. I built relationships with the city council. Everybody up here knows me. I built relationships with city staff. It's about relationships, and it comes back to that lesson that I learned as a young engineer. What are you doing, kid? It's about building trust with people. I teach a project management class right now, and the first thing I do is I go, what's the most important thing you can do as a project manager? And they throw out all these technical issues, and and I go up to the board and I write the word trust. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm asking for. I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for your trust. It's very sacred, and it shouldn't be taken lightly, and I don't take it lightly. I've worked hard to earn your trust. I hope to earn your vote.
Joe McElroy.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for everyone for putting this together and for coming out tonight. I think the size of the crowd shows what the city is like, the passion for excellence. And when I ran 4 years ago, I said I felt that most of everything in my life would help contribute to me being an effective city council member. I've been around this stuff for many years, first as a journalist, then as a city planner, and then also as a consultant. I think it's really played out that way, but in addition to having the technical and the educational background, from a personal point of view, like John said, it is a matter of trust. I think that people who deal with me know that they can trust me. They know that I'm approachable, I'm willing to listen, I'm willing to change my mind when confronted with different evidence, and I've always voted my conscience, whether it's politically expedient or not.
Thomas O'Hale.
I'm relatively new to the community, only been here 16 years. I come from Proviso East, where I was a teacher, a dean, a coach, in charge of the student council, and then finally I was elevated to assistant principal. As assistant principal, I was in charge of discipline. Now, Proviso East is not an easy school, and I had 3 deans that worked underneath me, and we suspended anywhere from 70 to 85 students a day. If I did not have 23 or more students slated for expulsion at the next board meeting, I wasn't doing my job. Now, I did that for some time, but I had one kid that would always come back, even though I suspended him. He'd say, "What's up, O'Hill?" And we'd chat, and he'd see what he's doing with his life. He's starting to go out with older women now and things like that. And, we just got along together. And then I got a call from a mother. They said, my son has been shot, and he's dead. I went to the wake, and, I looked in the casket, and I said, maybe if I didn't suspend this person, he would have had a good life. It was at that time that I decided to leave Proviso, and I went to Truman College, where I started a school. We used to call it alternative schools. They call them charter schools now. And I said, we only are going to take students that have dropped out of school or been asked to leave their school. That was my population. And for 25 years, it was 20 years at Proviso, for 25 years, I produced thousands of graduates that never would have been there. They have gone on to college, and God loves me for the work I did there.
Steve Peterson.
All right, thanks again to everybody for coming out and for hosting this event. This has been really fantastic and great for me. So why vote for me? So I think that one of the keys to Naperville having an effective council is different voices. So, we're going to need attorneys on there and accountants and folks from Rotary and very different varying backgrounds in order to be successful. And so I want to bring the business person's viewpoint, the entrepreneur's viewpoint. So what I've done is I have started, grown, and sold businesses. To do that, first off, it's really, really hard work, I've learned. But to do that, you have to just ignore the doubters, right? The number of times you come up with an idea and say to somebody, like, I'm going to go do this. And they say, what? You're going to do what? I'm going to take a gift card from Home Depot that can't be bought anyplace else and put it in a grocery store. People say, people don't buy buy gift cards in grocery stores. Now they do, right? So these are things that I've done, and I think that I can bring that attitude and that passion to the council and to Naperville. I grew up here. I love living here. My family is here. My kids, I hope, stay here. And so I'm at a point where I am ready to bring this passion to Naperville. Just in December, I got out of the last company that I had started, and so I've got the time, the passion, the energy, and I hope you guys see value in having me on the council. Thank you.
Well, on behalf of the Rotary Club of Naperville, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. It's a good crowd. It's good to see you all out here. This is the first candidates forum sponsored by the Rotary Club of Naperville, and they did a great job. Thank you to the Rotary. Thank you, John Gallagher and your crew and everyone that set this up. It's been a really exciting evening, exciting times for Naperville, that's for sure. We hope everyone watching will take the information provided by the candidates and evaluate who their choices will be in the April 7th election. If you want more background and additional information on the candidates, you can go to positivelynaperville.com and click on their election and voters guide links. In addition, you will also find more information at each candidate's websites. You will also be able to view this forum in its entirety on YouTube. It will be available in a few days. And as we finish up tonight, the Rotary Club of Naperville would like to thank a few people. First and foremost, the Judd Kendall VFW Post 3873 in Naperville. Thank you for the use of this wonderful facility. It was nice and cozy and warm in here, too. Thanks to Glenn Lilgenberg and Frank Trout for being our videographers, as well as setting up the live streaming of this event on the internet. To Rachel Sarah and Catherine Hoffman for keeping the candidates in line. Bringing the bell. Liz Zienti and Atul Akand for setting up the banners and the decorations. Wendy Gross and Hunter Byington for producing this event for the Rotary Club of Naperville as well. And I want to thank you all for joining us for this most American activity. And again, very many thanks to the Rotary Club of Naperville for bringing this to us. I'm Dolly McCarthy, and just a reminder, John reminded you earlier, you're welcome to stay afterwards and join the Rotary and folks down in the bar, right? What time do you have until down there? Is it open till they kick you out? 10 o'clock. All right, so you're welcome to join us there, and please join us tomorrow night for the final candidates forum right here at 7 o'clock. Thank you all. Good night.